Coming to you from UBN Studios in Burbank, California. You're listening to the UNSUGARCOATED podcast with your host, Aalia.
Hello, and welcome back to another season of UNSUGARCOATED with Aalia, your favorite social good podcast. We are very excited to be back in the studio, bringing you more empowering conversations. The season that we have this time for you is dedicated to silver linings, and you are going to hear this season from incredible individuals who fully grasp that concept. By that, I mean, if you've lived long enough, you've overcome multiple challenges, then there might be that moment where you have either tried to see the silver lining or it has become glaringly apparent. I'll give you an example. When I struggled with my health challenges, the friendships and the relationships that I found in the cancer community saved my life. One of those beautiful relationships lasted nearly a decade, and when she passed away in August 2019, it hurt tremendously. But from the words of Garth Brooks, a song called The Dance, it says, "And now I'm glad I didn't know the way it all would end, the way it all would go. Our lives are better left to chance. I could have missed the pain, but I'd have had to miss the dance." The ability to perceive silver linings is an optimistic mindset that promotes emotional resilience and the ability to adapt to future challenges. This hopeful approach enables people to view situations through a cognitive filter in which they perceive themselves as able to cope with stressors effectively. Some lucky people come by this skill naturally, always finding a silver lining or having a bias for action that allows them to take steps immediately forward, then get them out of the rehash, rumination, and dwelling on the setback. Yet anyone can fight off the trap of pessimistic framing and bunker mentality if they know how to challenge the stories in their head. The amazing woman joining me today has been able to do just such a thing in her life, and through her works, through the challenges of even dyslexia. She is a mother, an artist, activist, philanthropist, explorer, and a lover of mind-body expansion, and I know you will be inspired by her words, which many of us have actually seen. So without further ado, let me get to it. Laura Kimpton is a California-based artist best known for her monumental word sculptures, including love, believe, dream, magic, and XOXO. Debuting at Burning Man in 2009, these sculptures have been celebrated and proclaimed by collectors and individuals across the globe. Kimpton often uses her laser-cut birds, a motif she uses to represent freedom from the weight of our words and thoughts. These birds and her artwork embody an intimate dimension for Kimpton, who confronts personal issues in her work ranging from her severe dyslexia to the death of her father, the hotelier Bill Kimpton, in 2002. Kimpton has won 6 Burning Man art grants and has displayed her work in solo exhibitions in New York, Los Angeles, and San Francisco. Articles on and images of the monumental word series have been featured in the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Rolling Stone, Huffington Post, the Press Democrat, Town & Country, San Francisco Magazine, and Inc., just to name a few. Kimpton's art and sculptures has been exhibited from coast to coast domestically as well as internationally in Puerto Rico and China. Her 12-foot-tall hashtag was selected as one of the most influential work of the decade in late 2019 by ArtNet News. Kimpton's art consists of painting, mixed media installations, and sculpture. Her creativity stems from a desire to question traditional views on social interaction, invoking through her art a reaction and discussion from her viewers that ultimately complete her projects. Kimpton is always exploring new mediums in her search for invigorating means of communication. She lives in in LA and Fairfax, California, and here to have this amazing conversation with me. Thank you so much. Please welcome Ms. Laura Kimpton. Thank you for being here. You are such an amazing inspiration. My best friend Ange, which people hear me talk about, she's the one who originally connected with you, and she's been following you for years.
Yeah, it's been kind of crazy. It was a iMessage, and lately because of suffering from bad side effects of COVID, I've had a lot of free time. And so I've been having random conversations with people I don't know from all over the world.
Yeah.
And so it's been kind of an interesting thing.
Well,
yeah.
I appreciate that it led to you being here and being open to come in. And I am so glad to hear that you have, I mean, I know you're still dealing with some of the remnants of COVID and how that journey has been for you. But I'm glad to see that you are here.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. No, I got it November 18th. And as my lung doctor says, I had one of the worst cases ever because I have the most antibodies he's ever seen, but I have no lung damage. But the fatigue and the vertigo and bringing up colds and stuff, it's still been around. But they say I've been in lockdown, and they tell me that if I stay still for 3 months, which is very hard for me.
I can imagine. Definitely from your bio, we don't sense that you would.
But luckily, I taught Photoshop in high school, so I'm in love with my iPad and pen and Procreate, which is a Photoshop type program with paint. And so I've been making I think I've been making the best work of my life. So.
I love that. And I feel like when I have a lot of conversations with people who struggle with the lockdown, a lot of the recommendations from mental health experts and so forth are find something that invigorates you, that makes you feel a little bit of happiness. And art can definitely be related to that, right?
I tell my friends to get paint by numbers and, to get these little sticky things or learn to knit or anything. I've made more art in the last year that I've made in 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah, because the last 2 years I was on the road I was only home 13 days each year because I was either going to a place to promote or going to schmooze, and I follow a band called Widespread Panic. So
I love this.
Since 1989. So I used to see about somewhere between 10 to 30 shows a year. But I also go with my collectors. So the band has, high wealth sometimes. So I'm always working it.
Right.
Or not working it, but that's how I am. So.
I feel like that. And I know.
And then my big sculptures are now built by, they have to be licensed welders. I welded all the way back in the beginning when we did Celtic Forest. I used to be a huge flame artist at Burning Man.
That's actually something I wanted to get into because obviously I know that you do more than just these sculptures. And we do have a photo where I'm thankful to actually have a representation. The audience will see it on the engineers will throw it up. But I had shared with you when my publicist came to Los Angeles, who does all my pictures, and we went into Venice. And she saw the love letters, the rainbow love letters. And she says, we have to get you a picture of you here. We have to. And she was freaking out. And I thought she just liked the installation to be totally canon. And she's like, no. And later on, of course, she's like, no, I know this artist. This is. And so I was so thankful to learn more. And then to have you here, of course, is hugely an honor. But so you do different types of art, painting and sculpture and these huge monolithic.
I just made my best sculpture in Tulum that I've ever made. It was a 30-tree steel forest that had words and birds cut out of it, and everybody danced within it. It was amazing. So, but a lot of people say, like, when were you an artist? I'm like, oh, I was born an artist. And then one of the things I have going, people always come up to me and say, I want to be an artist. I'm like, be an artist. And then they're like, I can't draw. I'm like, I can't draw. I mean, I could draw until I got in so much trouble that I stopped drawing in schools. But I said, by the way, I'm not an artist because of my product. I'm an artist of the way I live my life.
So
I am art.
Yes.
Which was kind of cute because I was in Tulum for a festival that treated me like a queen for all the years I worked hard. And I got to bring a person to be my crew member so I wouldn't be alone. And I brought a guy I sponsored from South Africa, a 25-year-old for surfing, and he ended up winning the world champion longboarder, my sponsor. But I was like, who should I bring? And I brought him because we could share a room because he's kind of a son. Right. And he, later on at the end, he'd sit me down and go, you changed your story a little bit here and here about like 4 months or 2 months. I'm like, Stevie, I am art. I am a performance. Have you noticed that the people are waiting in line to talk to me? Nobody else is complaining.
Right.
So he was kind of like all worried but I'm like, wait, I'm this festival. I'm the star of the festival, and people here are waiting to talk to me. So don't worry about it. And I'm also an Irish storyteller, and my father always said, don't let the truth ruin a good story. And it's not like I'm lying. It's just that I'm in the moment, and I'll say that I traveled across Africa for a year, and maybe I did it for 6 months.
Right.
And
The technicality.
It's technicality. And I'm not saying that, I studied at the Vatican in Rome and just make that stuff up, but it's just the storytelling. I've always been a storyteller. And so was my dad. My dad was a huge storyteller.
How, so how did you end up getting into like the actual mechanics of welding and putting, when you vision, I see you as a visionary, clearly. You can look at something that other people might not see.
In my head.
How does that work for you? How does that process work for you?
Well, that's why when you talked about my dyslexia is a superpower, because I'm a meditator, and the last thing I need is more words. I think in images. Like I was on a phone with some very big wigs, and they wanted me to deck out a whole cruise ship. There's a cruise ship called the Jam Cruise, which is all the New Orleans. Yes. And they wanted to do one that was musicians with a little bit more yoga and meditation in the daytime and Burning Man at night. And they were going to hire me to deck out the whole thing. And in the conversation, just talking to them, I had decked out the whole boat, already packed it in bins and put away.
Oh my gosh.
So that's the way my mind works.
Right.
Like it's kind of why I buy a lot. I buy houses, sell houses, buy houses. I like installations. And it was kind of interesting. People always said to me, who was the creativity in your family? Because my mother is definitely not. And my father was a investment banker who wanted to be a hotelier. I mean, not hotelier, sorry, hotel man. And he designed all his restaurants and all his lobbies.
Oh wow!
So my dad was an installation artist.
He was a creative, yeah. He was
but I didn't realize that, and sadly, he died thinking his dyslexia. He was stupid.
So we're going to talk
about a sad thing. I always made art. I was going to be an art teacher. I was a photographer. I always dabbled in the art clay in high school, but I never really called myself an artist. I was more an athlete. Mm-hmm. And then, but I've always been a fanatic of Rauschenberg and Joseph Cornell and the junk artists. Like I would go to museums all the time, and I would just die over their work. And I would dabble in it, but my critic would always be in my head. And then once my daughter was born, it took me 10 years to have her. So when she was born, my creativity exploded because it didn't matter anymore. It just mattered that my daughter was healthy. Mm-hmm. So I could do anything I want. And now, even last night when I was on my iPad and it wasn't working because I just created a piece I love like 2 days ago. So, and I keep on saying to myself, it's about the process, not the product.
Right.
And so I say that to myself, and for all artists out there, I literally say that to myself 100 times while making an art piece.
Right.
I agree. Because I'm doing this to keep me sane. I'm doing this, I don't even know if he's sane, but I'm doing this because I need to do it.
Right.
And so when lockdown happened, I ended up turning my living room into a resin studio. It was crazy. Which I might have to pay for because I'm about to put my house on the market.
I love that you're handy with your hands. My husband makes fun. There's projects I want to sand. I love refurbishing furniture. I've always been crafty with my hands. Yeah. And I think that often, women are perceived to be, in the kitchen cooking and baking, and
it's not the way I was raised. My mother, on the other hand, I have to tell you, when I'm mom, wasn't very happy that I did mom, because she's like that men are the ones that are doing all that. And I came out as, I wouldn't even say, I think I'm past feminism. So I have never ever crossed my mind. Now I have to say I'm enjoying it with my daughter right now, but never was that. To me, I was always building forts and playing in the mud and had 2 different shoes on and being raised in a wealthy area. I never fit in. So when people are like, always come up to me and say, you're so you, I have no idea how not to be me.
Right.
Because I always was breaking norms. There wasn't, and also, from 0 to 15, I wanted to be a boy. I was playing ice hockey every night or sports. So it's like, I was already, when you are that way, you just never listen to anybody.
Right. And it's a very interesting balance between like the feminine and masculine power that I think some of us just definitely have.
Yeah. And I definitely had, and then also in school, in 6th grade, I was told I was, retarded. So like, but I have to tell you, because I was so good at sports and so in my own head, I didn't even listen to them. I mean, the only special ed class I had to go to was English because I'm very good at math. I'm like off the charts. And the boys are really cute in special ed English. So yeah.
So I want to kind of dive into the dyslexia part, and I want to preface it by saying we found this quote from Nolan Ryan, very well-known pitcher, baseball guy, but people in baseball know he is. But there's a quote: "When I had dyslexia, they didn't diagnose it as that. It was frustrating and embarrassing. I could tell you a lot of horror stories about what you feel like on the inside. Keep pitching. Don't let failure of your last pitch affect the success of your next pitch." And this struck with me, and I'll tell you why.
It goes with sports. I mean,
right.
I mean, I'm right brain. I mean, my spatial intelligence is off the chart. I can ski like off. I mean, the things like I can do, I probably could tightrope.
Right. But yet, when you were younger, you didn't have that. And so the support for that, at least, or I'm curious to know your journey, 70 to 80% of people with poor reading skills are likely dyslexic. 1 in 5 students, or 15 to 20% of the population, has a language-based learning disability. And dyslexia is the most common of the language-based learning disabilities.
I would not call it a disability.
Right, exactly.
So, and I'm a teacher. I got to tell you, I mean, I got my degree in teaching. I taught junior high for 6 years, and I taught high school for 5, and I have a master's. So so I was able to see, well, because a lot of other things were going wrong in my life. I just kind of was a go with the flow person. So it didn't one more person telling me there was something wrong with me. Right. I don't care. I played on my dead end street, and I did very well in sports. So like, to me, it didn't mean anything. But as I grew older, when I still thought it was a mental disorder, I mean, I only read in the New York Times 7 years ago calling it a mental disorder. And I have one interview you would find online where I said, if I was the president of the United States, I'd say everybody who couldn't draw has a mental disorder. So it's the way that the school is set up. And so I studied Howard Gardner's 8 types of intelligence when I was a teacher, and he believed that there were 8 types of intelligence, and each group should have one intelligence in there. And our schools are just based on reading. So it's not that I can't read. I can read. I rather have played sports. And also what happens with dyslexia, why a lot of dyslexics are very successful, is from kindergarten on, you learn to bullshit. So I'll sit in a class. I remember sitting in 3rd grade and repeating 3 people's say of the book I was supposed to read.
Right.
So you're constantly trying to figure out your way down the path. But now, I do very well with my 200-word vocabulary, which I'm sure is more than 200 words. I say I do very well with my 12-word, 12-foot vocabulary.
No, it's incredible. My son is actually I have 4 children, and my son is dyslexic. Yeah. And I have to tell you that he's everything that you're saying. I mean, he's off the charts with math. Yeah. He's always was like what was frustrating is when I could see that there was something happening, the teachers would remember early on, they're like, oh, well, that's just normal. And then when I had really pushed for them to do some evaluation, just to identify it, so I could know how to support it, because I don't know how to support it. Yeah. And then it took
I'm a proud dyslexic.
Right. As you said, I mean, my husband, he says he struggled with dyslexia when he's younger. He's now an incredible film attorney and doing all kinds. He reads contracts all day long and corrects me.
If the reading was from right to left, I would have had no problem. It's just the fact that I go left to right, it puts me to sleep.
Right.
It's hypnotizing.
So that's so interesting. And, I know that from my perspective, I remember reaching out to the school. Teachers didn't know if I said he's dyslexic. They didn't know how to support him. And they would want to instantly put him into the special ed class.
Do not do that, because most dyslexics are incredibly, math, just off the charts. And then our memories in images. I can't remember anything in words. So my memory is in images. And then, so the first word, which I used to be a huge fire artist out in Burning Man, and the pieces were like burning books in a 16-foot book that you could turn the pages that had images on it instead of words, and flame came out of that. And it was steel books, burning steel books. Sure. So my husband came home at that time and said, I need a year off, because you were a crew of 60 people trying to keep them off drugs while trying to keep other people being burned. It was just crazy. And I was off schmoozing, so I wasn't taking care of any of the fire. so he was like, I need a year off. And I'm like, well, I'm not losing my truck at Burning Man, because you could have a truck if you're an artist. I think I am the only one that really drives around in my truck, but it's painted by a very famous artist, and it's very decorative. And I have like 50 stickers on it now. But I said, I'm not losing my truck. I had never even been on a bike yet, because I met my husband, the second husband, the first moment I was out there, and he was an art car builder. And so, and suddenly in my head, I went around to every museum and everywhere. And the only big word out there was Hollywood. Now there's big words on every ad and every place. And I thought it would be funny if a dyslexic got known for big words. Right. I'm like, oh my God, this would be hysterical. And that year the theme was called, I don't know, it was Earth or something. I can't remember. So I said, oh, Mom. And I put up Mom backwards. and then the funny thing was, I did not know it at the time so the bird we used in Celtic forests, and someone asked me what would I want to put around my moats, and I put the bird there to represent my dad, because my dad loved the sparrows in Siena, and then so he would go there every year. And so I was like, okay, I'll put that to represent my dad, because of my dad's my inheritance, I was able to build that art, and he had just passed. And so when I put up Mom, they're like, what symbol do you want? Because you have to have light come out, and you have to have a dropout. I'm like, well, let's put up the sparrow. And we get to hand them out, which is amazing. So it's a dropout that is a gift. And when I was standing at Mom looking at 12 foot tall, I realized it was just as much a dad piece. My dad thought in images, and my mom is definitely a left brain linguistic person. So there was a piece about both of them. And then we got to hand out, you want a piece of love, you want a piece of magic, you want a piece of oink, you want a piece of all the words we've done, live, dream, be okay, at Earth, #home. Yeah. And so, and it's been kind of funny, because like the love at the Venetian, it's beautiful, and it's red love under the waterfall. But we did a big opening, and people come up to me and say, it's the most beautiful art piece I've ever seen. And because to me, it was always a kind of like, I get that people find words so important. Right. But it was kind of a joke to me. Right. It's not a joke watching people enjoy it at all. Sure. I was just like, it just says love. I mean, it is pretty, it's beautiful, but I've always so appreciated everybody's love for the words, and people are just loving it. But now when I just made this a forest of words and birds, it was one of the first times where I blew my mind. Oh, I love that. So when I make collages, junk collages, I blow my mind. What is it that you think people love about these big words, aside from being able to take amazing pictures in front of them? Well, my pieces are very interactive, and so they can climb all over them, and they've climbed on top of them. And first we didn't allow that, and then on Love Year we must have not been there, and a photograph came out. It was made, the whole photograph. So we don't say you can climb our words, or we don't say you're allowed to, but we just don't stop people. You do, right? Yeah. It's like, I remember being in Amsterdam. I couldn't. I remember being in Amsterdam, and everyone was like climbing on. That's not even. That's like 7 feet tall. It's right. like 12. I know, exactly. And I was still nervous getting up on that thing. But so it's. I think what it does. Well, for me, I'm constantly working on my internal voice, and I'm constantly working on being. So I have a. Well, first question I'll ask anybody, because I also have a master's in psychology, so I'm a licensed therapist. So first thing I'll ask anybody who's asking me about problems, I'll go, are you in control of your internal voice? And they're like, what? And some people will say yes, and then we'll talk about the different ways to notice when you're in charge or your insecure person's in charge. But what the big words do, so say you're riding your bike across the playa, or even walking through Vegas, and you're in your head being neurotic, like, oh, I can't afford that thing at Barney's. And then you see love. You read it, and it stops. It's a restart for your internal voice. That's incredible. And it sends people on a positive message. And all my messages have always been about, well, my main messages have been that humans are not number one on Earth, and we're animals. So like at Earth, #home, to remind Earth is your home. But it's like, so even when I did Oink, it was so funny watching this guy ride his bike, and he's thinking about, am I going to run into my friends tonight, or what am I going to wear? And he looks over and says, Oink. And in reality, Oink is the word in okay. it's a state of okay. And I was a pig farmer, and the alpha will oink in every 30 seconds and going oink, 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 oink. And if some pig doesn't oink in, she screams. And she's not caring whether that pig's okay. She wants to know it's being eaten by a wolf.
Oh.
So she's really saying, are you in okay? Are you in okay? Are you in okay? And so I was going to put I'm okay out there, and then the middle of the festival turn it into oink. It's a joke. And then my husband, like 7 months later, after I put the application in, said, I can't, in the middle of a festival, pull up wires.
Right, right.
And I'm like, oh, I was on like 17 other things by that time. I'm like, oh, just put up a oink. And then I'm standing there, and I realize it says the word in the word okay.
Right.
So all my friends and a lot of people, whenever they trigger, I just say oink in your head. Oink, oink, oink.
That's a
I
great...
apologize. One of my things is I have PTSD, and I have an emotional support dog in here. And he's not been trained very well. He's playing on that cord right there. We just want to make sure he doesn't chew.
No, I don't want it to fall down on him.
That's okay. You should learn.
We have wonderful furry friends, and I love that he's able to be here and have
this is his first outing. No, this is his first outing, and he's been stuck inside the house because I was sick with the cold. So he so far up until now, when he's been out, he's always just sat in my lap. So
good. He's having fun.
Yeah.
He's having fun. He's exploring.
Yes.
I love it. It feels comfortable. So speaking on silver linings.
Yes.
How do you view its role in your life, and how has it impacted you positively and negatively? So
I'm a survivor of PTSD from childhood abuse, non-family childhood abuse. And so, and then having the dyslexia. So it kind of, what I think helped me was knew who I was. And if one thing you do when you're abused from a very young age is you put a wall around yourself. And so it taught me how to survive. And I wouldn't go backwards and do any of it over again, because I've been able to help so many people. And so when my daughter was born, and one of the theories I live by, and I don't know, not many people know it, is that you have to process what happened to you at the age of your child if you have the same sex child. So I'm just going to get some more water because I'm talking about a subject. And so, and that happened when my daughter was 3. It was the first time I ever, I have to say PTSD took me over. Mm-hmm. And so through not wanting to pass on my abuse, which is very difficult, and I got a master's in it, and I didn't do it, is I just kept on working on it. My daughter's one of the strongest human beings on earth. And so I just had to keep ahead of her. And so I find that sometimes, and then my daughter was slammed at 16, but she didn't have the skills that I had from 3. Right. But she's a strong girl, and she's working on it, and it's almost been made her stronger. And so so I've always used everything to, like, the process of getting past that has been made me stronger.
Right.
I mean, this is a kind of a side stage, but I once was opening a gallery in my little town in Fairfax, and this guy, I think he had a crush on me. I'm not too sure what he was, but he was following me, and he was on the whatever, the town council. And he's like, you can't open a gallery in Fairfax. And he was like following me. Like, I'd run into the gas station, and I run into this, and I turned to him and I said, honey, I was raised backstage Grateful Dead from 21 to 36. There's no crueler place on earth. And it is. I mean, I was in the Jerry Garcia family, and if you're with a star, they're going to come after you. Right. So I said, you're not going to scare me. Right. So, all like, even having cancer, and my family has suicide in our family, you just get up and keep on going. Yeah. One foot in front of the other. Right. But it helped that it started young for me. Right. Right. I mean, I relate. My audience knows I talk. I mean, I've always had amazing good friends because I've always been an honest, straightforward person. Yeah. Well, did you feel you didn't have a reason not to? I mean, you own who you are. Yeah, I own who I am. It's like, but also, like, when you don't fit into a box, because I was raised in a wealthy community in North Shore of Chicago, straight community. I mean, John Hughes made every movie about it. John Hughes took my high school. I was the last person to graduate from my high school. So John Hughes took it over after me. So, I mean, when you put into this box and you never fit into the box, it's kind of a wonderful thing if it starts young, because I've never, and also when you're an artist, you're allowed to be weird. You're allowed to be goofy.
It's funny that you say that, because even with my daughter, my 4-year-old, or any of my kids, when it would come to drawing or coloring, the teachers would always say, stay within the lines. I was always told, stay within the lines. I tell my kids, go outside the lines.
I say make new lines in the lines and then figure out, like when I do paint by numbers, but obviously I don't follow them.
Sure.
And one of the things that came to me were these little sticky bead things. And I ended up making my best art. Like I made my loves and, psychedelics coming out of the loves. And so I've never followed rules. I do believe rules are for others.
Yeah, no, I know. And I think that's I know at least my purpose behind it. And I want them to not feel constricted by those boxes and the stereotypes that a lot of people want to like fit you in. I agree.
Like my daughter's father was talking about Ivy League in kindergarten. I swear I would have blown up the Ivy League if she got there.
Well, and it feels good to just honestly go everywhere you go, showing up authentically as you. It's like, even, my husband and I talk about, like, he goes to business meetings in his sneakers and his shirts if he wants to wear a cool t-shirt or something. It's like this idea that he has to show up because he's an attorney in wingtips and a suit.
Yeah.
We just don't
never
jive with
ties.
that.
Anyway,
Yeah.
I mean, my dad was like that. So my dad died 20 years ago. And so I was going back to research because he died before pretty much before the internet or any social photographs,
Right.
but he had so much in print. And I found this video that Kimpton made about stories people told about my dad. And there were so many overlying things. I mean, I walk around in a holy $1,200 Ralph Lauren purple label sweater, and he talked about his holy sweaters and how he could buy, and I just bought a house in 3 days. I just decided instantaneously, but it was on the market for 3 days and had 12 offers, so I had to move fast. And people and my family and my daughter were a little like spun out by it, and I'm on there. It said Bill could buy something in a second and let something go in a second. So it was like it was great to see that it was genetic.
Yeah. I mean, do you feel like you got a lot from your father? You talk about him a lot.
Well, interesting enough, I got a lot from him, but I would say it's mainly genetic. And in my master's, I had to choose. You have to choose what you go to Jung or Freud, which I was very mad that they were choosing. I want to take a little bit of everything, and I chose environmental because I had to choose something. Yeah. And I have to say, for most of my upbringing, I saw my dad 6 weeks a year, but he was working so much that I have to say, most of it is genetic, to see the genetics come through it. And so he was always so busy, and I spent a lot of time with him in my older years. But still, I probably never saw him at a business meeting. Sure. He didn't share that with us. So,
okay.
So to find these stories, to watch this, it was like, whoa.
That's right. It must be fascinating. Let me ask you a question, kind of going back to your creativity, because it says, in researching about you, it says your creativity stems from a desire to question traditional views on social interaction. Yeah. Tell us more about that. Like, why?
Well, because I'm a psychologist, I've always constantly I have a piece that's a collage. It's two females, and then I have these little screws that come out, and then it goes around the ankle of the other woman. And so I analyze how women hold women down, and we're trained, and we do it in our head, just walking down the hallway or walking to the airport. We're like, nice sweater. And I've trained myself that if I ever did that, I have to say something I like about them, because you're just trained that way.
Right.
So, and also wanting to be a boy until I was 15, I was already, breaking the norms. And, my mom would have wanted me to be a debutante, but she made me wear a dress once a week, and I would wear it to the bus stop, take it off, and put it back on. So, I've never, ever even considered fitting into the norm. So I break it automatically, but dyslexics all break it.
Right.
Because they're told they're supposed to be this person. I mean, I have a stepsister who was told she was going to win the Pulitzer Prize when she was 5, and she did win it.
Right.
But she had to fit into all these things, and my daughter linguistically is off the chart, but I never told her. She went to a hippie school. She was never told she was better than others.
I love it. He's playing with the cord again. This one.
Let me grab him. Yeah, let me grab him now.
Come on, Colin.
The world is
Hi,
we're
everybody.
making
This is Colin.
film debut here, the podcast debut. This is our friend. For
This is my
people
emotional
watching.
medical support dog who seems to have not been trained yet.
Amazing. No, I'm so glad now people can actually see.
No, what happens is I have diabetes. And so when I go out in public, my diabetes sugar spikes by 100.
Oh, wow.
And so we're trying that if I hold him and feel him, that I can ground myself, because diabetes is affected by stress.
Mm-hmm.
So my PTS, because when you live in fight or flight since you were 4, you don't know you're doing it.
Right.
So I've very worked on that too. That's through meditation.
So do you feel that is kind of one of your top suggestions for people struggling with that then?
I mean, I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about it. Yes, meditation.
Or just methods that have worked for you.
So meditation has worked for me because I learned how to get control of my voice. And people say, do you meditate? I'm like, I meditate all the time. So my family was very involved in coming up with the word mindfulness.
Mm-hmm.
My dad left a foundation that 50% of the money all hit when he was alive was all going to this, but when he died, had to go to alternative means to solve depression. And he built he raised all the money to build this meditation place in West Marin called Spirit Rock. And so we got to go to a lot of things, and we wanted to put meditation in schools, but you can't call it meditation. So we worked with John Kabat-Zinn, and we came up with mindfulness. And so it's just being mindful all the time, being present. Like sometimes my memory is horrible because I'm so present. I'm paying attention to now. And I've also learned not to reflect on the past. Like when I leave here, I won't go, ugh. So meditation's helped, exercise has helped. And then I have to tell you, psychedelics, my family's very big on. So for me, it was ketamine with a doctor, which is not even a psychedelic. It's an anesthetic. And you work with 3 times with a doctor, and it just, so if you know somebody out there who suffers from depression, mine wasn't really depression. Mine was trying to not spin myself out because I'm in fight or flight all the time. Mm-hmm. And so ketamine was very helpful in that. And so I'm very involved with ketamine and helping people get past their depression or their trauma or their PTSD.
Right. Overcome. I mean, that's something we're very big on here with Unsugarcoated Media. I mean, survivors of trauma. I'm a survivor of multiple traumas and relate to a lot of the things. And I find that, and it's very interesting with mindfulness. I love that. I learned recently from one of my friends who's a cancer survivor. He's climbed every major peak on every continent. And he was saying mindfulness is the act of just closing your eyes and being aware of the things that are around you, the noises that you're hearing. You know, that's an act of actively being mindful. And so it's incredible that your father actually did that.
Well, he suffered from depression. So, and so he ended up going on 10-day meditation retreats, which I've done too. And he solved it. So my dad was the one that gave the money to Richie Davison in Madison, Wisconsin to scan the Buddhist brains to prove that the brain changes.
Wow, that's incredible.
And that's how it all started. And so my dad was the forefront on trying to prove that meditation will do that.
Right.
So for me, it's more like I was a dirt biker.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm climbing up the Sierras, and if you're not present for 1 second, you will hit a tree.
Right.
So it's just learning to stay present. Now, granted, I sit in my head all the time and come up with ideas for art and sculptures, but that to me is fun. And I think one of the problems with and I love my phone, I got to tell you, like I love my computer, my iPad, is that daydreaming is going away. And I'm a huge daydreamer because I spent 18 years in school daydreaming in the back row.
Right.
So I'm glad they didn't fix me.
Yeah,
I'm glad. I mean,
well,
I can't play Trivial Pursuit. There's nothing wrong with me, but I can't play Trivial Pursuit.
No,
well,
neither can I. So don't do that.
And so I don't have a lot of facts in my head, but I can tell you that I can probably draw every classroom I was ever in.
Right.
You know, and every husband I married. No.
I know we have a few minutes left, and I kind of want to ask this question. Two couple questions I have left for you. One of them is, what does spirituality look like to you?
Oh God, it's kind of funny question. My daughter says, "You're an atheist," and I'm like, "I'm the opposite of an atheist." By the way, my spirituality started before even English language started. It created atheism. So I'm an earthist. So I look to earth for all my spirituality. I wiggle my toes all day long. I ground to the earth. I look down for wisdom. So I believe earth popped me out, and I'm an earthist. So and then I'm also I go back to the ladies of the lake, and so I'm a Celt. So I believe I come from the women of the sorcerer women. So I asked the universe not to let me have the skills because I was barely figuring out these skills, but my daughter's asking for them. So
I love that.
We're Celtic, so all Irish English. So healing and using the earth to heal, and so.
I love that you're saying that. So this is more for the audience, but some of them know my
Like
current book.
Spirituality is huge, and also
Yeah.
I don't know if people know it, but when they think, they mainly think up in the right side.
Right.
I try to think through the heart. So when I'm thinking of something important and a decision I need to make, I put my attention in my heart. And so I never make a wrong choice when I do that.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And I wiggle my toes.
Leading with your heart. No, I love it. I only have to say this because the book that I'm writing right now, it's focused on Earth. And the journey is my two characters will find Mother Earth. And I think that people don't, I see us as leaves on a tree. If we don't have the earth, we can't survive.
I find us no different from a tree. We just can walk around.
Exactly. I totally agree with you because I can't stop drinking water or eating, and all of this comes from the earth. So
no,
I
and
feel
then
very connected
one
to the
thing
earth
you'll
when
learn
you
about, and I'm a psychedelic activist, is when you're on psychedelics, you see the fractals between you and the tree, and there's no difference.
Right, right. Well, and it's funny, even with your dyslexia, I'm colorblind. A lot of people don't know that, and I always jokingly say maybe I'm seeing the world correctly.
I'd rather be dyslexic.
maybe the way I'm seeing it, people will say, "Oh, that's weird. You see this? What color?" I'm like, maybe I'm seeing it correctly. Maybe you're, it's all about perspective.
Well, they're
right?
doing that now with autism, and my daughter's like really getting involved on the fact of, you're not the norm. And then it's like, what is the norm?
Exactly.
And my mother once said, "You're my only normal child." I'm like, don't ever offend me that way again.
I know. Nothing more I wanted to be was normal.
No,
at
she hasn't
point.
seen me with all these tattoos, which I've gotten the last 4 years, but it's like, I'm like, Mom,
I'm sure.
I'm not. Yeah, I'm not. I got them all with my daughter, I have to say. So,
that's cool. I know. I love that my oldest is 24 now, and like can't wait for my other kids to grow up so we can like have. My daughter sent me a meme the other day. Look at you. You said you weren't my friend when I was a kid, and now you're like my best friend. Because, I was one of those parents. I'm not your friend. I'm your mother.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Of course, it was just because, now I don't say that with my other ones because I learned. But, okay, the other question I have for you is what do you hope the ripple effect of your work to be on the world?
Oh, God. So there was I'll say quickly, there was about a year in my life I stopped making art because all I cared about was the red dot. And the red dot means you sold it. And it was the least year I needed money in my whole life. Right. So I was like, oh, I'm done making art because money was messing up my art. And then this wonderful artist called Shrine came in to my studio, and I was going to make my art and put it in a container for when I died so my daughter could have it. Right. Because I can't stop making art. Mm-hmm. And he came in, he goes, "What are you doing with this art?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm going to put it in a container. So when I die, my daughter can decide what to do with it." And he goes, "You know why I make art, Laura?" He goes, "I make art so people will go home and make art." And it blew my mind, and I've made art since. And every show I've ever had, people come up to me and say my art changes people's lives. And most people, and it won't be very long from now, a couple more years, don't know my real art. My art is made from junk. I'm very good at. I'm an assemblage Rauschenberg type kind of artist. Mine's a little more. I'm a photographer, so it's a little more balanced. But like I made an American flag. I don't know if you know what whippets are, but whippets is a Burning Man. And I went around and collected all these whippets at Burning Man, and I made an American flag out of it, and it's absolutely gorgeous. And so it's just I want my art to have is to go be playful.
That's incredible.
Like I go through museums and I won't look at anything that could be a photograph.
That's awesome.
I can see a photograph.
That's incredible. Actually, I lied. I have one last question for you.
And then that they remember that Earth is their home.
Yeah. Yeah, which is, I know the you couldn't see it from your end, but when we were introducing you, we had all the pictures of your art going up. And for those of the listening audience, definitely go check out the YouTube version so that you can see it because, it is incredible. And once you see it, you'll be like blown away. kind of going back, I want to go back to this last question, because we definitely here at Unsugarcoated Media also want to provide some resources for people, people in the audience who perhaps have someone in their family struggling with struggling to even identify that they had dyslexia. You went through it from your perspective. How do you feel a parent, if they suspect that their child has dyslexia or have concerns, what in your opinion would be the best course of action to take?
Like, I almost feel like I want to go on tour and talk to all dyslexic parents to explain their mind.
Right.
And what I would ask your child is first place, don't listen to schools. The schools are based for linguistic and scientific learners. And so ask your child how they learn. How do they remember things, or what they're going to thrive at? And then force the school to base them around your child, not your child around them. They have to legally. And so parents don't know their rights. And never, ever let your child think if someone tells them he's stupid, sit down your child and say to them, no, you're brilliant, and show them, like Einstein was dyslexic, and show all the people that were dyslexic and say, you know what? Well, first place, the English language makes absolutely no sense.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, so you're trying to put a child into something that makes absolutely no sense.
Right.
I mean, if it learned French, it would have been a little bit different.
Right.
But, so ask them how they learn, and then, let them thrive. And then if I were them, I'd ask them to learn if I had a child that wasn't a linguistic genius, which I did, I'd have them learn how to drive a heavy piece of equipment. Because you make a lot of money and you get a lot of change with that. So, there's so many other things outside. If you think back, we were all told we had to go to college. We all told that. And now the world's changing, which I love for my daughter's sake.
Mm-hmm.
And, then you're signing up for an office job.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're a Gemini dyslexic, no way you're going to fit them in the box of that. So, just let them follow them to see how they're learning and what they want to do. And, school's a very small part of it. They'll be out of it in 18 years. And I mean, I ended up getting a master's, so, just let them, don't listen to the teachers.
Right.
Because you know what? They go to teacher meetings. Not a single teacher ever sits still for 2 minutes without doing something else.
Right.
But they expect us to, I think school made me lazy. I had to sit still for 16 years when I should have been out building forts.
Right.
I should have been out learning tools. So if I had a boy, he would have never gone to school. I lived on
right now they're not because of COVID. That much I can tell you. Mine are actually fighting.
But even that's harder because now COVID's even more linguistically based at the school.
Well, it's interesting when you say that, because I could pick up Arabic very easily because it's phonetically. And yes, after 4 kids, I get to this, I'm like, English doesn't even make sense.
It's an art form too.
Right. But it's all phonetically. So even like my name, if you spell Aalia 3 different ways in English, it's only going to be spelled one way in Arabic. And it must be why he did actually better at Arabic when he was younger.
And also tell them, by the way, we all live by texting now, and I text with my dad had to have a secretary. I text with my biggest buyers, like a completely no grammar, nothing spelled right text.
Right.
And they have no problem with it because they know I'm an artist and they can understand it, and I'm kind of clever with words. I am clever with words. I just don't spell them right, and I don't put them in the right order. My phone is always changing my stuff anyways. I hate that.
Well, thank you. I do want to thank you so much for your time and coming in today. It's been a pleasure. You've said some profound things, and I know that our audience is going to be empowered by what you've said today, Laura. So just thank you so much.
Find me on sadly my Facebook got taken away, hijacked from me. So someone got in there and changed the password and changed the email, and Facebook doesn't care. So I'm going to start a new one called The Real Laura Kimpton. But I have Instagram, Laura Kimpton, and I'm constantly putting up messages and political messages. And you can iMessage me if you want to talk about, dyslexia with your child. I have no problem. Like, I like the iMessages. And if you want to talk about if you have a friend suffering from depression, I can help them how to get into some of these studies and stuff like that. So please reach out to me at Laura Kimpton on Instagram.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate you.
And bye, little Colin.
And for our audience, just quickly, if you have some resources, there's a couple resources we do want to give to you. https dyslexia.yale.edu, resources and parents. Also the dyslexia hotline, which is 1-800 232-3030 and dyslexiaresource.org. So we just want to thank you so much for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you for letting us be unsugarcoated.